introducing tag libraries. So far we've talked about internationalization, how to implement MVC commands. Now, over on the JSP side, how can we use tag libraries to make our lives a little bit easier and to make the UI aspect cooler? So JSP tag libraries. A JSP tag is basically a markup element that we're able to place within the JSP. The idea here is rather than, putting a whole bunch of code within our JSP for the specific markup that we want, that all that code is placed somewhere else, and then we can reference that tag, which will reference the code. Makes life much easier. The tag library is just that. It's a library that contains a bunch of different JSP tags. And so with our tag libraries, they are namespaced. They're unique. So some of the different tag libraries are like C, Portlet, Liferay UI, AUI, just to name a couple. If you want to take a look at the TLD, you can take a look at all of the different tag libraries that are out there. So a couple different examples here. Up here at the top in the init.jsp, we're basically saying I have a specific tag library that I want to use. This is where it is. This is its name. So the init.jsp file is the file that we use within Liferay to put a bunch of our dependencies for JSPs. So rather than going through each individual JSP and saying these are all of the tag libraries that I need, we put all of the tag libraries that we may use inside of that init.jsp and then reference the init.jsp in the rest of our JSPs. So all of that to say, next up we have the view.jsp. The view.jsp is going to reference or include the init.jsp so that when we use the Liferay UI user display, for example, it can actually get it. And then the actual rendered HTML is like so. So the libraries that are available by default, there's quite a lot of them. If you head over to root, it should be webinf there, and then TLD, you'll see a pretty extensive list of all of the tag libraries that are fair game that can be used. So some of the libraries that are available for our portlets by default, right? Core tags, formatting tags, SQL, and then the list here. Some of the important ones for us, starting with our portlet tag, this is how we are able to do things like call the render face through a render URL. We have the Portlet 2.0 and the Portlet 3.0, right, for the most up-to-date portlet tags. So the JSTL libraries, we're going to start off with the C namespace. This is kind of the general or the core, right? So C stands for core. So this is the core one. This is where we can do things like using the choose statement, typical HTML, right? Using variables, parsing XML, showing the date. The list kind of goes on and on. But kind of our core functionality from the C namespace, or comes from the C namespace. All right, so next up is going to be our Portlet tag library. So right now we're using Portlet 3.0, and so we're adding the respective tag that goes with it. With the Portlet 3.0 tag library, we can do things like create our action URL as well as our render URL. Again, as review, within each one of those URLs, there's going to be a very specific parameter that we need to pass. With the action URL, it's going to be that first name. It kind of looks like a directory. And the render URL, right, we want that name value pair, the value of MVC render command name. All of that is made possible in part by Portlet 3.0. So Liferay specific tag libraries, we'll go through a couple of those. Pretty extensive list here. Let's highlight a couple of the key ones that we'll be using. The Liferay theme, right? We can pull Liferay specific attributes from the Liferay theme. The Liferay UI helps us do things like create a container to store or display our model entities. Alloy UI, though technically deprecated, we still use Alloy UI as one of our big tag libraries, right? Being replaced by Metal.js, which we don't see here, but another one that's up and coming is going to be Clay as well. But if you want more details, the documentation link is right there, so feel free to check it out. Now let's talk a little bit more about Clay. Again, we have this thing called Lexicon. It is the design language or the experience language of Liferay, saying this is what a button should look like. This is what colors you should use. This is what what your empty search result should look like. And then Clay is the implementation of that. So Clay is what's going to be replacing Alloy UI alongside with Metal.js. So Clay will define or give us the tags for a lot of different things. Drop downs, what cards look like, icons, the navigation bar, stickers, right? You get the idea. A lot of the UI aspects of Liferay are going to be implemented using Clay. So let's give an example here. So in our init.jsp, we declared Clay as a tag library that we're going to be using. From there, we can use Clay to display a very simple success message. So something like this. Okay, now charts, we also have tags that helps us display things graphically, something new here. So whether you want a line chart, a bar chart, a pie chart, right? Whatever sort of chart you want, we got that going on for us. So we have our tag library defined. It's called chart. And then down here in the back end, in our controller or our render, right, we can have the logic to create the chart, what the dimensions of it look like, what sort of data are we going to be adding to it. All of that to display something like this. So very cool. All of that, spent a long time talking about tag libraries. Why use them, right? What's the point? The whole idea here is, right, this is going to save us a lot of time writing code rather than retyping the same thing again and again and again to, create a render URL, right? We have the tag library just to give us the JSP tag to use that render URL. A lot of the things that we're going to be building out in the UI is going to be based off of tag libraries and the tags that we use with them. They're also responsive, so this will ensure that what we're building out is going to be displayed nicely on our various devices, and it can be upgraded pretty easily. All right, so let's go ahead and we're going to head over to Liferay Developer Studio to implement our tag libraries in various JSPs. Let's first review what we're going to actually do. We're going to start off by creating a couple of JSP files for the gradebook application, and we're going to be using the Liferay UI tag library. So the steps are going to be as following. We're going to create or copy over the JSPs into our gradebook web module. We'll then use the Liferay UI tag library to create a container that will display our assignments. Once we do that, we'll go ahead and deploy and then test it out. So let's go ahead. We'll head over to Liferay Developer Studio and take a look at what this looks like.